So now we need to understand the journey of software development. Cool with that? So let me give you a brief journey what happened to software development during these years, and at least I will tell you about my era when I started development back in 2004. 2005 I started my career, and at that time there are applications used to called as monolithic applications. And monolithic meaning they used to have a single application which used to have a UI component to it. Okay, then you have UI is strongly coupled with the business objects. Okay, and UI generally will be in a JSP or XSLT if you heard about it. And there are other frameworks also like Java Swing, Eco 2, okay, Struts, standard tag library. Okay, so there are other applications which are actually creating a UI and Java based services, correct? So now these Java methods, okay, which are direct, and there are service oriented architecture available that time also, but there are that was not popular at that time. So later on they found that okay, this is not the good way, this is not definitely not a good way to combine UI then the business objects and data objects and all those things. So after that layered architecture started building. So used to have MVC layer. Okay, so there is a controller layer, there's a view layer, and there is model layer which will interact. Okay, and they started building an application in that way. Okay, that was an awesome change, but then later on they found that okay, this is also not working great. Even though the architecture is great, but then we have to we have to componentize this particular application and make the changes here so that controller logic can be completely different and view logic can be completely different. Rather, they can actually get separated from project itself. So you can have a separate project for UI and separate project for your application programming, which can be anything. It can be Python, it can be Java, which can be R, Go, whatever language you want. It doesn't matter, but then you need that separation. But remember that at this phase also they are combining multiple business domains into a single application. What does that really mean? So here itself on this page I will show you there are different business domains. Now this particular business domain is particularly about computer technology and programming. Okay, so now you are actually looking at a business or books. So this is the first business domain, that is books. So we are actually selling books. In that there are computer technologies and programming books you are looking for. This is the business domain which is actually making a sale. But do you think loading an image is actually related to this? No. Loading an image is basically a completely business domain, a complete different business domain. Correct? So business domain is a boundary of a business. Okay, so now I'm actually clashing few of the boundaries. So I know that I'm actually referring to the book. Okay, this is our business domain. Now I have another business domain or another boundary of an application which is loading what? Prices. Another business domain which is actually doing what? Payment gateway. Now remember that when I add a cart, obviously Amazon is not selling anything, correct? Amazon uses what? Vendors. So when I add to the cart, there will be an attachment to who? Vendor, correct? So now vendor will be get connected to you. That, and again, who are you, by the way? So you are also part of a business domain. So I talked about different business domains here. One is customer, vendor, payment details, handling images, and books, right? So these are business domains, and you created a screen clashing all this business domain somewhere. So this particular area which is clashing domain. Okay, the diagram might not be that good, but yes, you got that point, right? And you actually created something like this. Cool with this? So now in this particular portion where services and UI or applications and UI were separate, at that time also what used to happen is you are actually combining business domains together to create one application. Okay, and this application used to called as monolithic application. It's a single elephant. Correct? It's a single elephant moving really, really slow. Correct? I'll take a pause in a minute and I'll tell you a quick thing about this. So now you have UI component separate. Okay, it might be deployed somewhere else. And now you have application component separate here. Okay, which can be Java or Python or whichever language you have. So now You created this, but you were combining business domains. Okay, so you got customer as well, you have vendor as well, payment details, okay, and other stuff, and everything is here. This particular architecture is called as, anybody knows? Can anybody answer? This particular architecture is called as SOA. Have you heard about it? Service oriented architecture. So service oriented architecture is this: when you have separation of UI and services, but still you are clashing with business domains. Correct? Plus, service oriented architecture talks about division of services. Service oriented architecture talked about how you should actually write services, like you can use RMI, you can use Corba or REST API or SOAP. Or REST and SOAP are already covered for people who are my students, but now you understood what exactly I'm talking about. So if I want to create this particular application with the help of SOAP, with the help of SOA, then what I will do is I'll create this entire application in a single app like this. Okay, having this as a UI component and services feeding all these things. Do you think that's a good practice? Do you? Yes or no? Good practice, right? Okay, now let me ask you one question. One question. How many of you think that payment gateway can be reused from this particular app? Payment gateway can be reused. How many of you also think that just fetching an image can also be another project altogether, because I might need that in other aspects of my business domain? So even if it is books, computer technology, or kitchen and utensils. In kitchen utensils also I need an image, and book also I need an image. So image fetching service can be separated from this. Isn't that true? Yes or no? Correct. You got my point, right? Showing the options of Kindle, paperback, and other sources can be applicable for all kind of book, whether it's a novel or whether it's a programming books. So I can reuse these options. So immediately after service oriented architecture, within 2 and 3 years itself, okay, that's a very less time, okay, to adapt and make the changes. Within 2 3 years itself, computer programmers and experts realize that we are not reusing the capability of services to the extent we should use. Okay, and at that point what happened, they started building the separated environment according to the business context. They already did that, but they don't have a name. So the first time somebody actually gave a name to it, the person is called as Martin Flower. There is a blog for that person, Martin Flower's blog. It's very famous, and first time he published a blog called as Microservices. Okay, so it's Martin Flower's blog who actually started the evolution of the services to microservices. Now, microservice doesn't mean that you're going to write a separate service. That means there is no class to extend, or there is no what I can say, a coding standard change. You're going to create same Spring Boot web services. You're going to create same Python Django web services, okay, or any programming language you use. That doesn't matter. What you do is separate the business context. Now, if I separate business context, what will happen? Okay, so now let's start the journey of microservices with a proper presentation deck. Cool with that? Do we have any questions in between? Okay, up to this point, whatever I told you, okay, is there any question? All clear? If it is clear, just type clear. If you have any questions, just let me know. So is SOA and microservices are completely different? No, they are not different. They are what? They are extension of it. So microservices is an extension of what? SOA. Correct? Awesome. So now let's start our presentation. Now that might actually exceed some of the time, okay, but that's fine. Okay. So this is where you go. So now this is particularly from a monolithic to microservices, step-by-step approach to build microservices based application from scratch. Cool with that? So let's start. So let's go to the agenda, like what are the things we are going to cover. So microservices architecture understanding, how do you decompose those business domains, API gateway, service discovery pattern, deployment strategies, resilient microservices, and then testing approach. I'm going to cover all these details. Okay. Now remember that these are all snapshot of what's going on. Okay, so there are courses around microservices which are exceeding 25 hours. Okay, and the thing is I will be covering like what is introductory part of it. There are a lot of frameworks available, so I will be talking a lot. So if you want to take notes, you can do that. Okay, have the pen and paper or open your notepad and just write it down, because not all the things can be covered in the one slide. It's not practically possible to do that, but I gave you a very good view like what exactly microservices will look like, and the transition from monolithic application to microservices will happen. Cool with that? So let's start with the first definition. So according to Martin Flower, these are the basic things should be microservice should be having. Okay, so understanding a service. Now microservice should be highly maintainable and testable. Good with that? So as it is a separated logic, it should be highly maintainable and testable. You can actually individually create a test case for a microservice. Let's like payment gateway. I can just test a payment gateway. I do not worry about whether images is getting loaded, vendors are coming in, customer is coming in, nothing like that. I can have a test case for individual microservice, and that's why it's called as loosely coupled architecture. So loosely coupled means they are not attached together, they are not coupled together. Cool with that? So it's a loosely coupled architecture. Good with that? Independently deployable. I can actually deploy my payment gateway on a different server, my customer management on different server, my vendor management on different server. Okay, and you can actually develop that with very small teams handling an individual responsibility. Customer is handled by a completely different team, and vendor is managed by a completely different team. My book image is managed by a completely different team. Correct? And you can also adopt any kind of language. Okay, so for my books publication, I can handle a completely different language. Let's say I'm using Python Django for that, and then my other applications are created on Spring Boot web services. Anything is fine. Okay, as soon as your enterprise allows that, that's completely okay. Correct? So that actually gives flexibility of building teams. And you know what, here I will talk about two pizza rule. So Amazon adopt something called as two pizza rule. What does that mean? The entire team, if you want to create a microservices DevOps agile team, you can feed, or you should be able to feed that entire team with the help of two pizzas, two large pizzas. So think about it, how many slices? So if even if you think per person you get two or three, okay, slices, okay, enough for food, how many slices that has? So let's say two slices or three slices for some people, you can actually get around 6 to 7 people. Correct? Not more than that. So seven, and max to max 8 people if you are girls. Okay, girls eat one piece only. Good with that. Awesome. So now that actually the team tells you what a team size. Okay, so that now your project is handled by a smaller team. Now what happened? Your elephant, okay, that is a monolithic application, got divided into multiple horses. Now who move faster, elephant or horse? Obviously horses, they will run, right? So now my deployment, okay, so if I want to change any module for vendor management, I can change it, I can deploy it. It's independent of change from other part of my application. Good with that? Awesome. So we will understand that thing one by one, don't worry about it, it's not only slide. Okay, so now let's understand this stuff. Okay, you can actually go for service API kind of structure where services are created with the help of queries and commands and operations. It can be asynchronous and synchronous, you know that. Then you have event-based architecture, event-driven architecture is also called as EDAs, okay, which can be used with the help of ActiveMQ, RabbitMQ, SonicMQ, IBMMQ, or your RocketMQ, or recently we have been using Azure Event Hub, or AWS has its own event hub, or the best one is Kafka. So all these things are what? There are publish subscribe kind of principles where one event is getting published to all the areas of your business domain. So you will get to know what's going on. Then you have business logic. A heart of the service is business logic. That's why you created a service. Correct? That's why. That is business domain and business logic. When service collaborate, it's through APIs rather than via database. Okay, so you do not collaborate the service with database. You collaborate service with the API. What's the difference? We'll see that. Okay, a service might invoke operations of another service. So one service can call other service. One service can call database. One service can combine multiple services together to create one unique service called as composite services. Cool with that? Now I gave you one definition. Now some definitions are not given here. So individual services who do not react or act on any other services are called as atomic services. And if you have a service which will actually combine these services together, it's called as composite services. Write that down. Okay, atomic service and composite service. Services database is private. Now this is something which we're going to build now. So now this is how your monolithic application will look like. Okay, so what do you see here? So this is your example application. All application logic services hosted in a single war file, and you have deployed that on a two application servers at a two different hosts. Okay, and this example application is basically attaching to the consolidated database. Now what you have to do is loose coupling will be achieved. Okay, and another thing is adhere to decomposition principles. These are the next steps. You have to decompose this application properly. Okay, and adhere to the decomposition principles. So what are the decomposition principles now? Is there any question up to this point? What are the disadvantages of combining UI and BO? So UI and BO, there is no what I can say disadvantage of it. But think about this way: if I want to now, I'll give you a simple application. So Nita, you are Indian, okay? So PAN card or any government website, okay? You are going on a government website. There is a UI, okay, and you can view the stuff, and there is a payment. So you know what? No, this is not demo class. I'm actually telling you all the things. Okay, I'm not selling anything. This is pure knowledge. Okay, Nirmala. So now what you are going to give you? Okay. So now you enter to the website. Now, how many people are actually hitting the UI? Almost everyone. How many people are actually navigating to the application? Almost everyone, right? How many people actually make the payment? Not even 7%. Not even 4%. Correct. So now think about this way. If I want to create multiple hosts of this application, what I have to do is if I'm creating and combining entire application into a single var, okay, what will happen? The architecture will look like this. Now I have UI, business logic, and payment gateway attached in this application. Okay, I also replicate entire stuff here. Now if my load increases, again entire stuff here, again load increases, entire stuff in the fourth application. What if I have this application separated? That payment gateway is different, business logic is different, UI is different. What will happen? UI can be hosted on multiple boxes, and payment gateway can be only on one box, because that is sufficient. Not all people are actually attaching to payment gateway. Getting my point? So this is a real benefit of separating services as well as UI plus business objects. Good with that? So that you can get the benefits of scaling the things individually. Okay, awesome. Moving ahead, decomposition pattern. How do you decompose the stuff? So decomposition principles can be either by business capability. So what's going on in that particular area? Okay, now another can be subdomain. Okay, so business can have subdomains. So even in supply chain, I can have a truck management and I can have a SKU management. Even in pharmacy business, I can have a pharmacy front end application or pharmacy doctor application. Even in banking applications, I can have account and I can have loans and mortgages. So every business has a subdomain. So you can create subdomain based. Okay, then you have verb based. Okay, so you can have a use case. Okay, so customer is performing some action, so that action oriented decomposition. So like customer create account. So now you have account related, create account. So all create account related things will be having a different services. These are all decomposition principles. Okay, different patterns adopted by industry or nouns or resources. So now you can have compositions like that, but the best one is business decomposition. That means the option number one. So you should actually divide your microservices according to the businesses. That means order management should be different. Okay, customer management should be different, vendor management should be different, item management should be different, image management should be different, price management should be different. All these things are what? These are business decomposition principles. So you are decomposing your application into multiple business domains. Well, with that, what you get out of it is, one thing is stable architecture, since business capability is relatively stable. Order management will not change that frequently. Customer management will not change that frequently, or even if it is actually not impacting anybody else. Correct? Plus, customer management application used by my front end screen can be reused for something else. Correct? So that's the benefit of it. Services are cohesive and loosely coupled. Now, the problem of this is, if you have a complex organization structure having very complex structure of business capabilities, then you will actually end up creating a complexity in microservices itself. Okay, that's really, really hard. Isn't that true? That's really hard. And then you end up having a complicated diagram and nobody understands what's going on. Okay. And another thing is, your domain will be really, really at high level, so you will be having a lot of services, okay, under one. So order management can have a lot of services. It can be order from vendor, order from DC, order from something else, order from customer. All kind of order management can be combined here, so that's complicated stuff again. So you end up creating a lot of services, but still this is the most adapted platform or most adapted decomposition pattern of a service. Okay, so if you look at it at this way, so decomposition pattern with the help of subdomains. So you can see that you have subdomain of order management, okay, inventory management, delivery management, okay, product catalog. All these things are separated as a microservice and they are attaching to it. So now if I need to access anything from invoice or inventory, I will contact that service, not the database. I do not write any logic in here which will related to inventory. If I need something, I will connect here. I will not be having any access to inventory database as well as inventory logic. That logic is completely separate. Delivery logic is completely separate from order. Order is completely separate from product catalog. Okay. And if they need any info, they call services from each other. Good with that? So if I see this application now, I decompose this particular application like business subdomain A, B, C, and D. So you can see, compare that with earlier diagram. You have entire application occupied here. Now I divided this. I have A, B, C, D as the subdomains and A, B, C, D as the subdomains. So what happened? Decomposed functionality. Easily scalable. I can actually add one more server, just deploy A, just deploy C, and deploy it individually. Correct? I have these smaller applications now which can be what deployed individually. Good with that? So now solve DB connectivity issue. Now problem here is, A connects the same database, B connects to the same database, so nobody stops application C to get the data from database and get the data for subdomain A. It's completely possible for this app to get connected and get the data for subdomain B. Correct? That is completely possible. I don't want to do that. So that is a single database principle. That's bad. Okay. Now spinning lot of connection to database, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, and again 4. So 8 connections here itself. Plus individually they might be connecting 20 connections. They might be spinning up 20 connections. So think about it, how many connections you raised. Correct? That's bad idea. Okay, subdomains can be bleed into one another. I told you about that. And subdomain functionality as DB is common. Okay, so DB is common. You can fetch the data. So A can fetch the data for B. That's wrong. Okay, so that's how do we solve it? That's a pattern called as database per service. Okay, database service pattern. So database per service, keep each microservice persistent data private. So now what I want to do is, I will separate this database either by schema or by instances. So what I will do is, I will have a separate database for order service and separate database for customer service, at least at schema level. Even if I cannot do that on a host level, I should be doing it at schema level. Like I have a completely different schema for order service and completely different schema for customer service. Now order service will not be able to access this database because I do not have a connection at all. Correct? It will only connect to this guy. Customer do not actually access or bleed into order service because it's only connects to this guy. So this is database separation principle, and this is most important principle in microservices. This is where people find it hard because it's not easy to separate the databases. because they have the legacy databases which are actually very complex. Okay, it's absolutely normalized at n levels. Okay, and now logic is bleeding into each other, and it's impossible for them to separate it out. So when redesigning our application, separation of database is a very hard stuff, but you have to do that. Okay. So approach using separate database per microservice, private table per service, schema per service, and database server per service. Okay. So out of that, schema per service is the most adopted approach. Okay. Obviously, it's not easy. So now what happened now? It will look like this. So now you have subdomain A attaching to database A, subdomain C. Now think about this. I have deployed now this application server. Think about this. I have A and C only, and B and D I separated here. So now compare diagram to this one. A B C D was deployed here. A B C and B B D D is deployed here. Okay, and there is a consolidated database. Now I'm actually moving that to this kind of platform. I have A and C here, B and D here, and you can make a replication. You can have B and D one more server which is hosting that, but B always connects to database B, D always connects to database D, C always connects to database C, and A always connect to database A. So now a separate database connectivity. So data separation, service individually owns the data. Any change in data will be caused only by published APIs and services. Okay, but now the problem arises, how do they know each other? Because C needs data from A, B needs data from C, D needs data from ABC. How do they know each other? Here it comes called as service discovery. So service discovery is what? So service discovery is very similar to our WSDL. Our service discovery is something like a register where all the services get registered yourself. Okay, so there are two types of services. One is called as client side discovery, where UI handles the stuff. Okay, UI actually calls an API management engine and actually calls the stuff. Okay, so service request will go like this. You have a service client, you have a registry aware HTTP client, which will actually go. So this is UI itself. UI will actually call a query, give a query to service registry, and service registry will tell, okay, this one, okay, let me give you service A for this. Let me give you B for this, C for this. Okay, and when it got the name, it actually connects to it and get the results to the client. That is client side discovery pattern. You can have a server side discovery pattern. Now here the services will actually call to the router. The router, so okay, when making a request to a service, the client makes a request via router, okay, load balancer. Okay, that runs at a well-known location. The router queries the service registry. So now what happens is you ask here, now it will ask this guy. Here service itself was called by the client. Here client asks router, goes and check which service is like serviceable or given, should be given, and then that it will return that particular service, and now router will connect to that particular service. So these are two patterns. One is server side discovery, one is client side discovery. You tell me which is faster. What do you think? Which one is faster? Any answers? Wrong answers are also fine. Client side discovery, yes, obviously client side discovery is much faster because there is no router attached to it and you are directly connecting to the service registry. But security point of view, server side registry is better because now you have a single point of attachment. Okay, I can secure that line and everything is secured, my services are secured. Good with that. So that is service registry. So now you add a service registry to your diagram. So now you have A B C D again. Okay, what you added is service discovery, or service discovery where you can actually attach to these guys. Okay, now if A wants other service from B, it will actually connect here and get the service of B. Got it? Will client call so many services? Client end up calling multiple API, okay, endpoints for a single unit of work, and security exposing API over internet. So these 2 points we need to cover now. Okay. So how do you do that? So for that you need API gateway. So what happened is I have these services A, B, C, D deployed on a host, but problem is they are chatting with each other. They are chatting and they are there's very nuisance getting created. So I really want something which is handling that particular chattiness. I really want, like, if UI is making one call, I want all that consolidation happen at some place. Okay. And that place is called as API gateway. So API gateway handles that granularity of microservice and gives you a single service out of it. So all the services which you saw on Amazon page, like your images getting loaded from different description, okay, prices and all those things, all of them will be attached, combined together at this particular point called as API gateway. So for client, there is one single call that this is the URL. That particular URL goes here, service API gateway understand that this is called to payment, image, okay, description and reviews. It will fetch that details, combine that details and send back to the client. Good with that? So now you created a single entry point, okay, also a consolidation point, okay, which is called as API gateway. It internally uses service registry for sure, or service discovery is absolutely important. It internally do that, but API gateway consolidates the result and provide it back to client. So client do not have to worry about calling all these things, details, routers and everything. API gateway manage that stuff. Good with that? And there are awesome API gateways available in the market. Okay, we have Nginx, we have TYK, we have Kong. Kong is very, very popular. Kong has two ways. We have free open source microservice gateway, as well as it has an enterprise one, which is also amazing. So Kong is very special. You have cloud gateway, Spring Cloud. You have Zool, which is coming from Netflix OSS. Okay, this is not a Netflix which you watch on a TV. So of course you watch it, but Netflix actually provided open source code, which is actually helpful for microservices development, called as Netflix OSS. OSS stands for Open Source Stack. Okay, so there are a lot of services available from Netflix, and one of them is used as an API gateway called as Zool. And there is another product called APG Edge. Okay, is also very popular API gateway or proxy. But with that, so these are all awesome stuff. So out of this one is open source. Okay, has an enterprise product as well. Kong is open source. TYK is also open source. Okay. Spring, Zool, APG is not open source product. It's a paid one. Okay. These are all API products. Plus, if you are moving your application to cloud, and you should be, then you have your own API gateways. Okay. So AWS has one, Google has one, Google API gateway, and Azure also has APIM. Okay. Azure API management. Okay. Awesome. So these APIs do what? They combine the services for clients. Okay. They also do security stuff. So now you're gonna add another layer here, which is called as API gateway. It takes care of. So there are three important functionalities. One is it takes care of single point of entry, security. They provide a proxy. Proxy means what? So suppose the data is coming in the format of JSON and you want XML. That kind of conversion can also be handled by API gateway. And it also do service consolidation, so you will not call multiple services, rather API gateway will do that for you. Good with that? So next step is, how do you deploy this stuff? Okay, so let's understand the deployment strategy quickly. So there are two deployment strategies here. One is multiple server instance per host and single service instance per host. Good with that? So now think about this way, and obviously the name itself says what they are doing. So multiple service instances for host, that means single machine will have multiple instances, simple as that. Okay, so you can have a single service multiple instances or multiple service multiple instances, it doesn't matter. Okay, now benefit of this is, okay, resource usage is relatively efficient, deployment service instance is relatively faster, and starting a service is usually very fast. Okay, now another issue there is a little or no isolation of the service instance. Okay, so if I just want to operate or bring down service A, it will be very hard for me because it's individually deployed on a service. Which on the other hand, if I have service instance per host, if the host goes down, okay, then my entire service goes down. That's also a problem. So VM per host. So the best approach to do that is, and see, whenever I'm saying host, it's basically a container, and there are containers called as dockers and kubernetes. Okay, but we're gonna discuss that later. Okay, so now I'll do what? Oops, sorry. Wait a minute. Yeah, here you go. So I'll apply that particular principle here. So I just said single host hosting a single service. So single host per service pattern. Okay. Now I added two more slides here which are talking about serverless deployment. So this is not related actually, but I will just add some theory. Now what is serverless is, now cloud platforms generally provide a service to actually deploy the application without any server. So you don't have to worry about whether it's a Tomcat or WebLogic or JBoss or whatever. You just provide application to Azure or AWS, and then it will actually deploy it as a service. It's also called as functions. Azure is called as Azure functions. Okay, that is called as serverless deployment. I mentioned some points here, but we'll not go through it. This is a different thing altogether. This is not related to microservices, but I added it here. Just go through it once. If you have any difficulties later, just ping back to me. Okay, these are serverless strategies. Like same thing again. Now you have browser or mobile connecting to API gateway, and API gateway are these now not connecting to your server. Obviously you have your service discovery not connecting to the individual services. You have serverless architecture, and it will again connect to either other APIs or cloud storage. Okay, architecture will look like this. Let's skip this. So now some quick things. Okay, so now up to this point you have divided your application in microservices. Okay, you have a single database principles, correct? API gateway attached. Now quick add-ons. Okay, so let's go through it in 5 minutes. Okay, so microservices chases is a handle cross-cutting concerns. So cross-cutting concerns like logging, health checking, matrices, distributed tracing, all those things are called as microservices chases. Okay, so you can use the applications like Gizmo, Micro, GoKit, or Spring Boot, Spring Cloud, Drop Wizard. All these things are awesome containers which can be used for chases pattern. So chases is attaching all these things to your microservices. So now this is a cross-cutting concern which is needed for all the services. So let's attach that to your service. So you have circuit breaker, chases components. All those chases components are attached to your microservices now. Okay, so come back here. Resiliency, we will actually create resiliency. I'll give you two important definitions here. One is retry. So suppose your client is trying to get the payment details and your service is not working. What happens? The client will not get payment details and you will lose your customer. So what happens in this scenario is you will have a retry enabled services. That means if service call fails, you will again try it. Okay, so retry when, and then you have maximum attempts. Okay, so these many attempts I should try. Good with that. And even if that particular thing is not responding after 3 attempts, you should do what? You should break that particular thing and attach to a different instance that is called a circuit breaker. Circuit breaker is if this particular instance of a service is failing multiple times, let's say max attempts are already done, then this particular service connectivity will be disconnected, and your routing, your client will actually connect to a very healthy service instance. Okay, so we have a component called as circuit breakers which will actually help you to do that. It's an electrical concept doing exact same stuff. It will disconnect this circuit from faulty part. So we are disconnecting from faulty part and then continue to use the same stuff. Okay, good stuff. Okay, now there are other component like health checks. We are adding rate limiters. We are adding like one application. Let's say I know that this particular API or service hosted actually can take only 500 requests at a time. I can have a rate limiter on that. Okay, and only limit number of services calls on that particular call or that particular service. That is called as a rate limiter. Health check is whether this particular service is healthy or not. So I can have these components attached and I can create this complete diagram now. I have an API gateway, I have this particular service, separated databases, components, circuit breakers, service registry, and health check attached to all the services. Remember this, health check is attached to all the services. You can check this, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. And circuit breaker again attached to all the services, 1, 2, 3, 4. Got it? So now you need inter-process communication. We'll quickly cover that. So this is the way you can actually have an inter-process communication with the help of event-driven architecture. and generally Kafka or Event Bus is used for that thing. Okay, so there is a new thing coming in the market called Alibaba Cloud, which is actually publishing a new way of queuing called as a Rocket MQ. That is also a good product, but problem is it's very much attached to Alibaba Cloud, and as of now there is no adoption of that cloud. Okay, so now depending on microservices communication pattern, like whether you are using remote procedure or messaging or domain specific, you can use these options. You can actually use REST or Apache Thrift, and internally you can use a Kafka or RabbitMQ. So I'll tell you what exactly happens. So suppose you are completing order service, and order service needs some data, or order service complete its execution, it will publish an event that okay, order completed. So it goes back to Kafka, and Kafka publishes a topic, okay, that okay, order service completed, and this event is published to all the other processes. So now customer service DB core API and email services gets that okay, order service completed. Now completion of order service will be consumed by customer, and customer says okay, order service complete, let me start, and it will start processing customer. It will publish an event that okay, customer service completed, it goes back to Kafka. Kafka publishes an event, okay, customer is also completed. And now at that point, DB as well as email service get triggered. So these two things are started in parallel and completes that particular process, publishes an event, and let the other people know that this process are also completed. This pattern is called as event driven architecture or EDA. Okay, and this is used in microservices at some point if needed. That's called as microservices communication. So now you add communication engine also, which is called message broker, attached here, and it is connecting to all those guys. So now your microservices architecture is getting mature. Good with that. So now I wanted to add caching. So there are some data which is actually one time only data, or I can use caching to increase speed, because remember that I have chattiness, okay, I have circuit breakers and all those that may slow down microservice process. So now I need a caching here which will cache the recently visible or recently accessed data. So I can use that with the help of caching technology. So client API and cache in between, which is connecting to DB. You can have four different parameters like what to cache, when to cache, where to cache, and how long to cache. Okay, depending on this point you decide that. And there are two important products here. One is Memcache, which is free, and Redis, which is paid, and most commonly we use Redis. Redis is really good, and we also use Redis in our applications. Okay, so we added caching. So let's add caching now. So go ahead and add cache. So now between database and application, you added caching structures to improve the speed of microservices. Okay, I'll come back to the questions. Okay, so now the last thing we have to consider, now entire architecture is really good now. So I can last thing we can actually discuss is about testing. So how do you test this thing? So there are approaches on testing. Microservice testing approach, the first testing thing is called a unit testing, where we will actually test an individual component. Other one is service component, okay, where individual services are getting tested. Okay, so service isolation, easier, faster, more reliable and cheap. Okay, so isolated services will be tested with the help of any product like JMeter. Service integration testing, now if you have a composite services which are calling atomic services, you can test it with the help of service integration testing. Okay, so that they can attach together and then test it. And finally end to end, end to end is entire business flow. Okay, so entire customer journey, so customer journey will be tested at end to end testing. So these are four stages of testing a microservice, and obviously script is being written for all these things. Okay, there is nothing manual in microservices. If you do manual, basically you are defeating the purpose. Microservice brings in agility. I don't want application to wait in my QA area for 3 weeks. If it is developed today, tested tomorrow, deployed tomorrow itself. That's it. In my company where I work, we deploy 3 builds per day in production. Think about that. So it doesn't matter. Develop it immediately. I want to change it. Just deploy it. Done. So morning, 11 o'clock we push one build, 3 o'clock we push one build, and 11 o'clock in the night we push one build. You're done. Got it? Awesome. Moving ahead. So just discussing best practices before I take questions. So avoid chattiness, because you understand that there are many services. So avoid chattiness. Okay. If you are creating lot of service calls, like one service is calling another service, again it's calling another service, again it's calling another service, then there's a lot of chattiness happening. So we don't want that. Okay. The next one is use of microservices frameworks like Spring Boot, Netflix OSS, Spring Cloud. Use of effective caching. Caching will improve the speed and serverless architecture. So serverless will give you what I can say, server without server deployment. Okay, so these are four best practices for microservices. Cool with that? So that being said, we actually covered the entire architecture of microservice and how it goes or how it gets developed. So do we have any questions to discuss here? Where it will reside the caching? So caching will have your own server. Okay, caching will have your own container. Okay, and it will be accessed just like database. You can have caching as a part of your Docker container as well, or your same application as well, but that is not an efficient approach. Okay, generally cachings are local host. Okay, so it's preferred to have caching in a local host, but it should be in a different container. APGs from Google? I think so. You are right. APG was not from Google actually, but now it's deployed on Google Cloud. You're right. Is it a XML file? Okay, Radhika, I need some background on this question. So UI takes long time to load. Is this related to services? If so, how to find out? UI takes long time to roll. It may or may not related to services. Microservices supposed to increase the speed of services, not to decrease them. Okay, so it may or may not be on services. It can be your what I can say, the network lag, your service failures. Okay, so any kind of application. But if UI takes long time, you need to really dig down like why exactly is taking that one, because microservices improves the speed. Okay, how to find out? Again, it depending on debugging skills. Service registry's XML file depends. Service registry can be a table, can be a property file, can be XML, whichever strategy and product you use for that. There are products for service registry as well. Are microservices still popular? Microservices only thing right now in the market. Okay, this is the latest one. This is what I do for Home Depot. I used to do that. Means I'm not with Home Depot right now, but we used to do that in Home Depot. Okay. Okay, questions, concerns, doubt, issues, problems. So now you know that where to reach me. So this is my personal email address. This is my Stuck Infosys email address. You can reach me anywhere. So rishi.arun, rishi.arun at yahoo.com. That's my personal email address. rishi.stuckinfosys at gmail.com. That's my Stuck email address, as you know. And this is Passion Gurukul. So Passion Gurukul is somewhere I teach people, okay, for skills. Okay, so this is not related to your courses. This is related to anything. So if you want to create your own teaching business, or if you want to create your own YouTube videos, if you want to teacher like me and earn a lot, okay, yes, you earn a lot when you are a teacher. Okay, so when you teach, if you want to learn that, earn that, okay, you can do that. You can access learn.rishiarun.com. Okay, as simple as access domain. You can actually access my Gurukul. You can access the courses from there. Good with that, but I do not want to advertise some stuff like that. Okay, so that being said, I'm stopping here. Okay, do you want those links? I'll quickly give that. So these are email addresses. So here you go. That's our email addresses. And if you want to access Rishi's Passion Gurukul, of course, there is only one course which is free there. Okay. Okay, that's Rishi's Gurukul where you can actually learn. Good with that. So that being said, I'm stopping here. If you really want to know more about this thing, okay, I sent a request for Python REST client. Yes, Radhika, I saw that. I'm really sorry that I couldn't reply, but I will do that. Okay. Thank you so much. So thanks a lot, everyone. Have a wonderful night ahead. I will try to deploy this application, deploy this video in my YouTube channel. Oh, that is a good thing. Let me give you a YouTube channel link. And YouTube channel has a lot of cool stuff, and that is only for students. Okay, there is no advertisers. There is nothing on monetization. There are no hashtag, and I do not make it popular. I don't want this YouTube channel for just creating a video of jumping and awesome musics and all those. This is pure technical stuff, pure technical, only for students. Okay, so if you want to grab it, save it, subscribe it, doesn't matter, but look and take the knowledge. That's most important stuff. Okay, cool. And if you are interested in any of the stuff from Rishi's Passion Gurukul, definitely I'll be happy to share that information with you. If you want to be a trainer, if you want to start earning immediately, just let me know. Okay, hit on that particular link or drop me an email and I'll tell you how to do that. So that being said, I'm stopping here and we will connect again for awesome sessions like this. Okay, so thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good one and enjoy your time. Thank you. Do you see a value here? If you think I gave a value, just type value delivered, VD. VD. Awesome. Thank you. Thanks a lot. So let's stop here and let's connect multiple times for this awesome sessions like this. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good one. Enjoy your time. Thank you.